The first edition of our exit interview series. And of course, got to start with Tage.
You're Locked On Sabres, your daily podcast on the Buffalo Sabres. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to you everydayers for coming back. And we are going to kick off our exit interview series today on the show. And we're going to start with no other than Tage Thompson. Got to start up front, and we got to start with the guy that led the team in goals, points, and, just the highlight reel for sure. The highlight reel for Tage, probably 15 minutes long on YouTube, whereas anybody else, you might be looking at 10 or under. So we'll look at Tage, the improvement he saw this year, how repeatable what he did this year was. I think that's a good question. What is fair to expect from Thompson going forward? And of course, we'll get a little bit on the playoffs a little bit later on today's show as well. If you missed our previous episode, we encourage you to go check it out. Hadi Kalakash, Locked On NHL podcast or prospects. Also, lead prospect analyst at Dober Prospects. He broke down all the Sabre prospects with us. Yuri Kulik and Noah Ostlund, and not in that order necessarily, but Isaac Rosen, I guess we're doing now for Rosine. I was corrected after the fact. Isaac Rosen. And it'll probably change 3 more times before he becomes a Sabre. So we talked about him, some of the goalie prospects, what fair to expect from Devin Levi. So be sure to check out our last episode. And, thanks for making us your listen today when you might be looking for a break from all the NFL draft coverage, because I'm living in that over at WGR in the last couple of days and weeks. So nice to get a little mix it up a little bit in here with some hockey. And we'll, get into our Tage Thompson exit interview in a moment here, but I do want to start with the playoffs just at the beginning here. The Leafs and the Lightning play tonight, and Toronto, I predicted that they were going to win this series. I actually have them going all the way to the conference finals. I'm not going to lie, though. They have not played as well as I thought they would. They really have hunkered down and come back in these games, but Tampa's choked. And it's something you would expect from Toronto, or something you'd expect from a young team like maybe the Devils. Tampa had 1 minute to go in game 3 to end it, go up 2-1 in the series, and they blew the lead and lost in overtime. Game 4, they had a 3-goal lead in the third period, and they blew the lead, and they end up losing it in overtime. That team, Tampa, should be up 3-1. They should be up 3-1, dominating the Leafs. But some late collapses, and Toronto has fought, and they are, they've blown 3-1 leads before in the postseason, so they're not done yet, but we'll see. Maybe by the time you listen to this on Friday morning, they have done it. They've gotten through, but we'll see. They're in Toronto for game 5. You got to close it out there. Otherwise, game 6, you go back to Tampa, and if you lose those 2, now all the momentum's on Tampa side. Game 7, Toronto's going to blow it again. Game 5 could be pivotal. So that's what's going on the Eastern side. Otherwise, we've got Florida and Boston still going on. The Devils-Rangers series to me is just not that interesting. I don't know why. I just can't really get into it. And I think the West has been more interesting to me. Edmonton and LA's battles, overtime games there. The Kraken taking it to Colorado. I don't understand what's happening there. I'll be the first to admit it. Not everyone, but a lot of people picked Seattle to pull the upset there. I did not. I thought Colorado is still the juggernaut that they've been, and I thought they would crush the Kraken. And, man, Seattle's outplaying them. I didn't think Cale Makar deserved to get suspended, so that hurt Colorado as well. These playoffs, man, has anyone else been watching them and been thinking, Sabres can hang with these teams? This is not like past years where it's just, whoa, the gulf is enormous. No, I think the Sabres could be doing what the Panthers are doing right now, pushing Boston to 6. I think they could be doing what Seattle's doing right now, pushing a Colorado and maybe closing them out. I don't think they're too far off these teams at all. So it's, I guess, a good feeling as you're watching these playoffs when your team's not as far off. Even the Islanders. How are the Islanders still going? I get them out. I hate them so much. They're the worst watch in the sport. Just absolutely the worst. So just a quick synopsis of what's going on in the postseason. One more. You know, I gotta mention the Vegas Winnipeg series, because if Winnipeg had been controlling it, we all know what would be happening. I would be the first guy to be right there with, aha, Jack Eichel, you stink. Eichel's been incredible. Eichel's been very good. In fact, there's a lot of former Sabres around the postseason that have been great. Taylor Hall is dominant right now. Ryan O'Reilly's been great for the Maple Leafs, and who else? There's a bunch of others. I mean, Evan Rodriguez, even for Colorado a little bit. Allmark made a big boneheaded error in game 5, but otherwise been really good for Boston. Tremendous for Boston. Little twist of the knife there, maybe. But that should go to show you, though, is the Sabres always had a lot of talent. Coaching, man. Coaching and defense. Because Ristolainen's the one guy that's not in the postseason, but Housley and Bilesma and Kruger and Risto playing 30 minutes a night. Like, that's really all it took to sink this team. That's it. It wasn't on Eichel. It wasn't on Reinhart. It wasn't on Kane. It wasn't on O'Reilly. It wasn't on Hall. It wasn't on Foligno. All of these guys, all of them, all the names I just mentioned, and more that I'm forgetting, all of them are in the playoffs right now and are key contributors. Every single one of the guys I just mentioned. That's not a coincidence, in my opinion. Maybe together, they're a little bit more poisonous or whatever. I'm sure that argument is going to show up in the YouTube comments of this video, but I think it was more coaching and that blue line, because they're not in the playoffs, except Bogosian, but he's, third pair guy for Tampa. All right. Quick timeout here. We'll get rolling on our exit interview series with Tage Thompson. First up, what's next for Tage? Recapping his year. How great was it? The injury status, and all that. I had here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Sneaky Joe DiBiase, and we are presented by Indeed. Indeed, when you're drafting your fantasy team, you ever wish you could handpick the best stars for your business team without anybody else getting a choice? If you're building your talent roster, you can do that, and you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Don't spend hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills, when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like matching, assessments, and virtual interviews. Hate waiting. Indeed's U.S. data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job. Indeed knows when you're growing your own business, you have to make every dollar count. That's why with Indeed, you only pay for quality applications that match your must-have job requirements. Visit Indeed.com/lockedon to start hiring now. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon, Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast, and it's time to begin our exit interview series, and we are going to start with Sabres forward Tage Thompson, the man that took the Sabres in the league by storm at the beginning of the season, got off and running in the first couple of months of the season. He ends with a clean-looking 47 goals and 47 assists for 94 points. That is the most goals by a Sabre since the 1993 season with Alexander McGillney and Pat LaFontaine. He was setting all kinds of records throughout the year. I will say, though, as we look at Thompson's season, it really was different month over month. The first few months of the year, first month, October, you know what? It took him a little bit to get going, right? But he ends up with 6 goals in 9 games. Then 8 goals in 14 games in the month of November. In December, 13 goals in 11 games. So look at that right there. That is 27 goals in the first 34 games of the season. And from there on out, he had 20 goals in more games than that, in 40 games, actually. So the goal production went down, the point production went down, but that might coincide with when we think injuries began to happen. We don't know a firm date because the Sabres, and the NHL doesn't give you injury information like that. But There was a back issue at some point for Thompson. There was a shoulder injury at some point for Thompson. There was the rib thing late in the year. I mean, he was battling through it in the final games of the season, and you could see it, right? The final game of the year, once they got eliminated from playoff contention, he's out of the lineup. He couldn't do it, and he was missing games down the stretch, toughening through it. Couldn't play center, had to go to the wing. I think Thompson's numbers in part went down because of injury, but a little bit maybe also because teams started to key in on him more and play him a little bit differently. I think that could have contributed to this as well. The power play production, especially on that front, would be the case here. But man, I think what we see now in Tage Thompson. Before we get to what's next, let me stick on point here and talk about his season as a whole. Thompson played over 90% of his minutes at 5-on-5 this year with Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuch. They solidified a line. That was the line from the beginning of the year. And there were times throughout the year where, they'd take Tuch off the line. And of course, Thompson played wing at the end of the year. But for the most part, that was the line. So that line is written to me in stone for the foreseeable future. They work well together. They do not have a good defensive impact together, but that's okay because they have the puck for most of the time that they are out there. So the fact that they're not that good in the defensive zone as a line, it gets minimized because, again, they have the puck a huge percentage of the time that they're on the ice. Expected goals, Thompson's numbers went up in a big way, highest of his career. He's gone year over year now with the Sabres from 44% to 42% to 45%. Then last year, the big step forward with 49%, and this year up to 50%, above 50% expected goals for at 5-on-5. And of course, huge power play production going on for Thompson as well. He went to 20 power play goals. In fact, in 78 games played, he played 78 games in each of the last 2 years. Last season, 26 even strength goals. This season, 26 even strength goals. The power play number doubled. 10 power play goals last year, 20 power play goals this year. That's where it really went up. So still a very strong performance at 5-on-5. The big growth at 5-on-5 didn't actually come in goal scoring. It came as a playmaker. And that was something that I said needed to happen before the season. If he's going to be a number one center, I thought, you know what, if he was what he was last year, 38 goals, 30 assists, 68-point player, all right, goal scorer, 70 points, boom, second line center. That's a great second line center. But to be a number one center, you have to be more of a driver of play and more of a playmaker. You have to set others up. And Thompson came out doing that this season. 47 assists. He went up 17 assists. Now, that happened at both even strength and on the power play. His even strength assists went up from 24 to 33, and his power play assist numbers went from 6 to 14. So, as a playmaker, Thompson's growth to me, despite the fact the goal production went up as well, the point production went up in a big way because of the assists. Now, he would have scored 50 goals. I think he would have gotten to 100 points had he stayed healthy. We'll get to next. Is that a fair expectation? Who is Tage Thompson going forward? Is he the 100-point player we saw this year? Is he the 68-point player from last year? Or maybe somewhere in the middle? We'll get to that when we come back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast with Joe DiBiase. We are presented by Game Time. Game Time, there are, bunch of concerts and sweet comedy shows going on in the area right now. Of course, you have Bison's baseball. You'll have hockey and football firing up eventually down the road. And if you want to go to any of these concerts, shows, or sporting events, you need to do it with Game Time. Forget planning months in advance. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals and tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. The Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. My favorite reason, you have images of your seat before you buy right there. It's the easiest way to tell what your view is going to be, what your angle is going to be. Do you like being high up when you're at a hockey game? Do you like being down low? Maybe at a concert, you're not sure what your angle on the stage will be. There's sometimes, where you're behind the stage, but With Game Time, you're never going to have that question because when you scroll through, it's right there for you. It's even in the background when you're looking through the list, or if you click on the tickets, then it'll have the big image there right there for you. Snag the tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Sneaky Joe DiBiase back here on the Locked On Sabres podcast. Exit interview for Tage Thompson. We went over how Tage improved during the season, where he improved, but what we still need to see or would need to answer is what's next for Tage? Is there anything else Tage needs to improve? In my opinion, there is not. He could get better defensively. That's about it, right? I mean, he could get a little bit more fluid and dynamic, I think, on the power play when there are PKs that are focusing on his side. He doesn't move a lot on the penalty kill. Sometimes he'll flip with Dahlin and go to the point, but more movement there. Ovechkin has made a living on that one-timer on the power play over the years. He's not always just standing right there. He's moving up and down. He's changing his angle. He's finding ways to get open a little bit. And I didn't see a lot of that from Tage in the second half of the year. So that's a very, very minor thing. But if I'm looking for something he could improve on, that might be it. I mentioned how he could get better defensively. He could get a lot better defensively. It doesn't matter to me too much. I mean, he's way above his value right now. At $7.1 million for the next 7 years. This contract, by the way, just now kicks in for next season, which takes him to his age 32 year. He doesn't need to get better for the contract to be worth it. In fact, last year, that's a $10 million hockey player, making $7.1 million for the next 7 years. The value is already there. But again, in an exit interview, what's Don Granato telling him? Hey, we got to focus on your defensive game a little bit. I like that you take chances, but when you're in your own zone, maybe a little bit more heady and who's in front of the net and, you know, how how they're rotating. You got to flip with your defenseman, communication, stuff like that. Zone exits. Again, little stuff, not even a part of his specialty or how he'll provide value, just becoming more of a complete hockey player. These are all minor things, though. What my big question is for what's next for Tage Thompson, what is fair to expect from him offensively? Is it fair to expect year to year to year to year to year, he's now a 90 to 100 point player or even more? Because he would have gotten to 100 points had he stayed healthy. I don't know where I land on that yet. I think I want to land on, though, this is more what he is. He's a 90-plus point player. I don't know if he'll be 100 every year, but I think he's going to be in the 90s a lot more often than he's down closer to the 70s like he was last season at 68. And I think the playmaking is the biggest reason for that. That's where the growth was. The shooting percentage, you know, guys like Chris Kreider, he'll have a career year, score 50 goals because his shooting percentage doubled. Well, Thompson's shooting percentage didn't really go up. You know, I thought there might be regression. There was very slight progression. He went from 15.0% to 15.9%. That's probably what he's going to be. You know, there might be a down year here or there where he's around 12%. He scores 35 goals. But there might be a high end year where he scores 18% of his goals and he's around 65, 70 goals. I think he's capable of that. But I think the average is going to be closer to what he was this past season, with some years where he's a little bit below and some years where he's a little bit above. That's, to me, a fair expectation for Thompson. But we can't know for sure until we get more years under his belt, right? Like, usually you'll know about at 4 or 5 years in what the mean is for a guy like that. So we'll see. Maybe this was a career year for Thompson. Maybe he'll never touch 94 points again or 47 goals. I would want to bet, though, that he will. I would want to bet, like right now, 25 years old. He scored 47 this year. I'd want to bet he'll score 50 goals in his career. I wouldn't want to bet he averages 50 goals in his career. I might want to bet he averages like 42. But I would want to bet he'll have one, if not 2 or 3 50-goal seasons in his Sabre career, just in this 7 years that he's under contract. So that's where I'm at. But it's a good question. You know, what's right to expect? What's the average? What would you take for Thompson? Is 90 points a good average? Or do you want 100? Do you want 95? You know, I think that's got to be the territory, though, for him. Capable of winning a Hart someday. Well, probably not. McDavid's in the league. But anyways, that's really it for Tage Thompson exit interview. We'll end there as we go forward with him on a brand new. There's no contract stuff to talk about with him. We'll do that with some other players, but 7-year contract. He's good till when's that contract expire? 2030. Yeah, we got a long time. Next up, Alex Tuck. It'll be our next exit interview. In fact, we might do 2 in 1 episode. Alex Tuck, Jeff Skinner, of course, will be the next 2. We'll round out the top line on our exit interview series. And if you want to, comment or tweet us out who you'd like to see next after we're done with the top line, feel free. I was planning on just kind of going through the lineup, but if we get requests, we're going to end up going through everybody. So, we can change up the order if we get requests on that front. So thanks everybody for listening to the Locked On Sabres podcast. If you're a Bills fan, enjoy the NFL draft, and we'll talk to you next time. Thanks for making Locked On Sabres your first listen every dayers. Next up on the show, as I mentioned, Alex Tuck exit interview.